This man once made over $100 billion from a single investment. He invested in Uber, NVIDIA, and even OpenAI before anyone knew their names. Then he lost it all in the most spectacular collapse in investment history. This is the story of Masayoshi Son and SoftBank's $100 billion bet. SoftBank was the world's largest tech investment fund. It's basically a massive and notoriously risky investment fund created from Japan. The man behind it all is Masayoshi Son, currently the 48th richest person in the world. But here's the crazy part. He was once the person who had lost the most money in history, a title he only recently lost to Elon Musk. To understand this story, we need to go back to Son's first big bet, the dot-com bubble. After some profitable businesses, Son made a huge bet on Yahoo in 1995. When the stock skyrocketed, Son briefly became the richest man on the planet. Of course, then the market collapsed. But his most important bet was about to come. In the year 2000, during a speed dating event for entrepreneurs organized by SoftBank, Son met a peculiar man with a startup he described as digital yellow pages. It would connect buyers and sellers online. That man was Jack Ma, founder of Alibaba. The company was barely 6 months old with minimal revenue, but it was already attracting thousands of users daily. Son was fascinated, but for a different reason. It was the look in his eyes, an animal instinct, the same feeling I had when we invested in Yahoo with just 5 or 6 people. I invested based on instinct. That famous instinct Masayoshi Son always talks about, that ability to detect in his gut an entrepreneur hungry for victory. Ma and Son reached a $20 million deal for 30% of Alibaba. In 2014, Alibaba went public with a $200 billion market cap. Son's investment was then worth about $75 billion. By 2018, it had reached $192 billion. Masayoshi Son had just pulled off one of the best investment plays in history. His reputation as an aggressive and risky tech investor grew. He became the richest man in Japan, and he was ready for the next big bet. It all began in October 2016. Masayoshi Son announced his new plan, the most ambitious of all. The Vision Fund, a fund dedicated to tech startups. Son claimed to have the ability to see the future, to bet on the most ambitious entrepreneurs. And everyone wanted in. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund contributed $45 billion. SoftBank put in another $45 billion. Apple added a few billion more. The Vision Fund was born with $100 billion. An authentic colossus. It was the future. It was the big bet. They had Masayoshi Son as president with all the necessary backing, and the brightest minds behind them. Son did have some brilliant projections. Of the 70 companies we've invested in with the Vision Fund over the past year and a half, all are focused on artificial intelligence. The fund included rising tech stars like NVIDIA, OpenAI, Uber, WeWork, Slack, ByteDance, DoorDash, Didi, and many more. However, his way of executing things would soon leave investors scratching their heads. In early 2019, SoftBank sold their entire stake in one of the companies. They had paid $700 million for 4.9% of NVIDIA and sold it for $3.3 billion, a return of 4.7 times in just 2 years. Sounds good, right? Or at least it should sound good. NVIDIA has a market cap of $4 trillion today, something no company had ever achieved. You're probably feeling as much regret as I am, that 4.9% stake in NVIDIA long before the AI boom. That stake would be worth between $150 and $160 billion today, a return of 231 times or 23,000%. Masayoshi Son could have had another Alibaba moment, and he knows it. He has called NVIDIA the fish that got away, and we have to admit, it was a very, very big fish. But remember what he said in 2019? They're all using the power of artificial intelligence as part of evolution. Son wouldn't stop talking about artificial intelligence, long before even the AI explosion. Yet NVIDIA had been betting absolutely everything on AI for years. In their 2016 report, they wrote, "The impact of artificial intelligence on the tech industry and society will be exponential." NVIDIA was pivoting their entire strategy toward AI. But Son abandoned ship just before the finish line. So why? Well, that brings us to another problem. Just 2 years after creating the Vision Fund, Son was already under pressure. He had made gigantic bets, but had no real returns. Some startups like Uber were growing, but still burning cash. Others showed worrying losses and weren't advancing as fast as he thought. To make matters worse, by late 2018, NVIDIA had also crashed. After the collapse of the crypto mining fever, Sun needed to show results, especially since he was planning Vision Fund 2, which needed to attract investment. So with a guaranteed return of 4.7 times, Sun sold NVIDIA, a decision he would regret for the rest of his life. But unfortunately, the Vision Fund's problems were just beginning, because some of the companies in the fund were somewhat strange. One of them was WeWork. How does WeWork fit into all this with the power of AI? WeWork was born during the height of the sharing economy fever, like Airbnb and Uber. It was a tech startup that rented offices to freelancers and startups, companies that needed co-working spaces. But there was one small detail. They didn't own any real estate. They simply subleased offices to other companies. And even stranger was their CEO, Adam Neumann, and how he secured his funding. He gave Masayoshi Son a 12-minute tour. Afterwards, Son invited him to his car, and on an iPad drew up a deal, a $4.4 billion investment in WeWork. He told Neumann to make WeWork 10 times bigger than his original plan, to understand that in a fight, being crazy is better than being smart, and that WeWork wasn't being crazy enough. I guess Adam smelled like an entrepreneur. In total, SoftBank ended up putting $10 to $12 billion into WeWork, part of it from the Vision Fund. But other investors weren't very happy about this, and their doubts would soon be confirmed with WeWork's IPO attempt, because when the details came out, investors discovered something shocking. Adam Neumann had been doing questionable things. With a sudden injection of billions and following Son's advice, Adam went a little crazy. He trademarked the word "we" and then sold it to his own company for $6 million. He cashed out $700 million in stock before the IPO even happened. He structured the company with super voting shares. Each share had 20 votes, ensuring control of at least 50% even after the IPO. And of course, he bought a multi-million-dollar private jet. All this besides an absurd $47 billion valuation for a company that was losing money every single moment. Remember, they didn't own any real estate, they just subleased. Even with Son's billions, the numbers were alarming. But of course, if you invest $10 billion in an unprofitable startup based on a gut feeling, or rather a scent, these things happen. The IPO was canceled. Neumann was forced to step down, and of course the private jet was sold. There was so much chaos inside WeWork that someone wrote an entire book about it. But the worst part is that even after losing one of his biggest bets, Masayoshi Son had no respite, because it wasn't just WeWork that was in trouble. It was almost all of his investments. Several companies in the fund were starting to lay off staff, while losing millions and millions. Uber, one of the biggest, had just gone public, but its market value had stagnated. It was still losing billions every year. Vision Fund investors began to get impatient. Many demanded more transparency and changes, but few changes came. What did come were the losses. When 2020 started, many of these fragile cash-burning startups collapsed with the pandemic. Even companies you'd think would survive, like Uber, saw huge revenue drops. In May 2020, SoftBank reported the fund had lost $18 billion, and much of the staff was laid off. Son had fallen into a hole and somehow decided to keep digging. In a call with investors, he went as far as comparing himself to Jesus. He said that, like Jesus, he was misunderstood. He acknowledged his WeWork investment had been foolish, but assured that if his investment performance improved, so would his reputation. However, this didn't help him recover credibility, something he needed for his next big plan. Remember the big sequel, Vision Fund 2? But this time there wasn't much enthusiasm. Son's goal was to raise $108 billion for the new fund, but he got less than half. And worse, all the money came from SoftBank itself. He failed to secure a single external investor. Nobody wanted to board this disaster. Although there was one ray of hope. To everyone's surprise, one Vision Fund startup did deliver returns. Coupang, the e-commerce platform, was exploding. Called the Amazon of South Korea, the Vision Fund had invested $2 billion, and their IPO was gigantic, reaching $85 billion in valuation, a gain of nearly $37 billion. But Son didn't have time to celebrate. Despite that enormous success, it was just a small piece of the Vision Fund, which continued sinking into losses. Even with Coupang's profitability, it wasn't enough. Uber was still losing billions, and when it finally showed some profits, investors were disappointed. WeWork finally went public in 2021, but with a valuation of just $8 billion, far from Son's original figure, marking a colossal loss. And from there, it was all downhill. The rest of the companies were in the same situation, burning money nonstop or collapsing completely like FTX. In 2022, SoftBank reported a $27.4 billion loss on the Vision Fund alone. Just in that year, their stock portfolio was collapsing, and then everything accelerated. The fund lost $23 billion just in the April to June quarter. By the end of that year, total losses reached $32 billion. Not even OpenAI's explosion could save the fund. SoftBank began reducing its investments drastically. In the third quarter, they only invested $300 million in new startups. It might sound like a lot, but it was only 10% of the previous year. But it was already too late. Investors had completely lost patience with Masayoshi Son. Yes, he had made big bets in the past, but now he was behaving recklessly. The Wall Street Journal called him the big losers. Bloomberg described the Vision Fund as Son's broken business model. They even called him a gambling addict. Son's grand dream had collapsed. The only company that could have truly saved the Vision Fund, the one that would have made it all worthwhile, was NVIDIA. Son was left humiliated, but at least this made him more humble. "I'm ashamed of myself for getting so carried away by past big gains," he confessed. He had been arrogant and prideful about his success, especially that enormous Alibaba return. But returning to his own example, as Jesus said, "Those who exalt themselves will be humbled." Perhaps he'll change his mindset in the future, but only time will tell. SoftBank's story is the ultimate cautionary tale of tech investing. How instinct and arrogance can destroy even the most successful track record. From making the greatest tech bet in history with Alibaba, to losing over $100 billion in the Vision Fund disaster. What do you think? Was Son a visionary or just a reckless gambler? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of tech's biggest rise and fall, make sure to subscribe for more incredible business disasters. And hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest videos.